doing? What's this? Oh, it's a little kitten. Hello and welcome. If you are new here, my name is Kat. I am a maker from Hertfordshire in the United Kingdom. If you're returning, it's nice to see you again. I hope you enjoy the slightly different crafts that I've been doing, which have made me very, very happy. I'm going to start with just a brief update because I think it's quite important. Firstly, it's been busy and it's mostly been really nice things the last month or so, and I feel like a sense of abundance and just lots of good. There's a bit of like extra balance that's been required to try and counteract the busyness. If you're new here, I'm quite a sensitive soul. I think like many of us that craft, in particular, that use it as a kind of grounding tool. Yeah, it's been a lot, but there's some exciting things I really can't wait to share. Some of you that have been here for a long time will be a bit surprised and a bit relieved, hopefully, alongside us. And also I've been doing a bit of volunteering. I've only just sort of started, so I'm quite excited to really get into it. And I think you'll also be interested to see the things I'm going to learn as well. Yes, it's old prehistoric crafting, which is, you know, beautiful and warms my heart, and also it's outdoors, so like what more do you want? And if it's too bad a weather and I've got to do making, I could probably sit inside by a fire, which is like all of my favourite things in one go, with the exception of my husband and my cat. And my friends and all. Anyway, we're just having one of them days, I think. I haven't sat down with you for a while and I feel like there's loads to catch up on, but that's not really why you're here. So up front, this video is sponsored by Skillshare, which I'm very grateful for. And I thought I would quickly start by going over what I'm wearing, because I know that a lot of you are knitters and that's kind of why you're here. I will talk about a knitting project that I'm working on today, which I'm hoping to work on more while I'm editing, which is really exciting. I am wearing the Pagan Sky by Zante Knits, I believe, that I modified. I spoke about it in one of my more recent videos, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I love it. It's knitted using Telespin and Raw Wool Company, which are both yarns that I really love. I'm wearing my dress, which I affectionately call the Little Rebel dress. It is a short mini skirt style dress that features an elasticated waist, some short row shaping, and it's called the Rebel dress because I knit it in alpaca, which isn't truly the best fibre for knitting heavier garments out of because it drapes, but it's lasting really well and I'm really, really happy with it. That is a free recipe rather than a pattern that I created. And I'm also wearing my elf slipper socks, which are socks that I knitted from the 52 Weeks of Socks by Linocut magazine. It is now available on its own. I knit it using yarn that we had spun from local sheep, which makes them very, very special to me. And I've added also some leather from my parents' old Chesterfield sofa to the bottom, so they're really hard wearing. A bit gross, I'll show you anyway. This is the elf slipper and this is the underneath. I wear these outside in the house all the time. They are due a little bit of a revamp, but truly one of my most used piece of knitwear, and it's already the season to be wearing them again, which is wild. Oh yeah, happy autumn or spring depending on where you are. I have been interested in learning to carve spoons for quite some time. And when approached by Skillshare, it was the first learning path, which is a set of classes that caught my eye and that I ended up taking. And I'm really grateful for both them for reaching out, but also the knowledge that I gained and the little final project that I got to make. If you don't know what Skillshare is, it is the largest learning community online for creatives, and it's got thousands of classes led by experts in their field. And the different categories go from film to design to productivity. And I think it's both useful for self-development and also professional development, creative development, just exploring yourself, things that you would like to learn, and there's a lot of freedom within that to go, this isn't for me, I really want to do this. Get very distracted like I did by the more crafting, creative, practical classes rather than the productivity and organisation classes, which I know would benefit me, and I can't wait to take a few. But the nice, shiny, crafting things keep jumping to the top of my list. I'm really glad that I caught the wood carving at the end of the summer as we lead into autumn, when there really is a lot more of a feel for me of kind of nesting, if you will, and I tend to find that there's an autumn cleaning, much like a spring cleaning moment, and then there's time in the evenings where it's dark, where you're not out of the house. That's nice to learn and make. And I think this is the perfect time for me personally to like start leaning into learning new skills. And there's quite a few that I would love to take. There's one called Smocking, hand sew a traditional English Sussex smock dress or shirt. And it's a really beautiful item that I would love to learn to sew by hand. And I think before that I'm going to rewatch Bernadette Banner's hand sewing basics video, because that's gonna give me that grounding that I probably need just to refresh. And I want to get ahead of myself, and in this sort of time of like motivation almost, I want to do the Carving a Celtic Knot lino print class, and also as a knitter that tries to help others to knit to cater for their own body. I know that I'm now quite experienced. It took 5 years of learning about how knitting patterns generally fit me to really figure out what fits me and what doesn't. Brandi Harper's got a course called Perfect Fit Knits that will probably take that 5-year time and cut it down to about an hour and a half. So that seems like the perfect class for anyone looking to improve the fit of their knitted items. The first 500 people to use my link in my description box will get a month free of Skillshare. If you would like to join me in any of the classes, that would be really lovely. As I said, I have wanted to carve a spoon for a long time. I'm not sure, maybe it is because I can be a little bit clumsy, and it's somewhere between clumsy and also a bit of a barbarian. Like, I might be very small. I'm 5'4". I always think it's really hard to translate as to who's how tall in videos, but I'm a little bit strong, and sometimes that translates to a little bit of extra danger when it comes to handling tools. But the class that I took had specific videos on different types of cuts and safe ways of doing them, which was really, really handy. I was lucky enough to persuade Alex to come out with me to source some wood. We ended up sourcing some wood from an apple tree, and I have a bit of it here. This is a bit that sort of started to be prepared. Alex split it along the grain, and then we've started to get rid of the bark, and this will probably be another spoon in the not too distant future. And these are the two tools that I was using. This one was very kindly given to Alex from Harper, who we met last year in Norway, that taught us how to use carving tools. Oh, here comes the kitten. So this was the one that I used more for scooping out the spoon, and this was the knife that I used for bigger cuts to get rid of the bulk of the excess wood, and to kind of refine it. So it's amazing that you can make, almost unlimited tools out of just the two tools in my head. So this I also made last year as a tool for just leatherwork, just as like a thimble to protect my finger, but I did find myself using it a little bit this time too. Just when I wanted to get really gently refining things, and and to protect my fingies, because like I said, I am a klutz. And I did only get one little cut, which I think is really good going. It does mean that I now feel comfortable and confident enough to do this at home on my own without supervision, because in the past I really wanted Alex to be there to supervise. Here's Alex's one that's in progress, so you can kind of get an idea of what a spoon towards the end of its finishing would look like. So all we did is draw what we wanted our spoon to look like onto our block of wood, and then start to carve it into the shape, kind of being aware of where the knots were. There isn't any in Alex's bit. You shouldn't really use it with a knot, but I couldn't resist using the bit of wood because it felt like I felt like it could be a feature, and also it meant that the bit of wood would not have got wasted or put onto the fire, which I'm really excited to have. And then what Alex will go in and do is, much like I have done, is go in and just refine it a little bit more, potentially sand it. I did very, very minimal sanding on mine because I kind of wanted it to be a first spoon. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, I wanted to be able to see my actual carving improve rather than my ability to sand something down improve. Does that make sense? But here's my spoon anyway, and I'm really, really happy. I wanted something for my porridge or yogurt, and I think this is perfect. It actually was meant to be specifically for me as a left-handed eater. I actually normally, and I do also use my spoon in my right hand, but it definitely sits nicer in terms of the spoon bit. The way it holds just feels so good. I'm absolutely buzzing. So you could see the knot, you could see that the underneath is a little bit more mottled, and but overall I'm really happy with a first attempt at a new skill. I kind of can't wait to do the next one. So I guess this isn't going to become a carving channel, but I do want to do a few more because I think a nice little tea scoop would be good. Maybe for our tiny little van. So the next thing I would love to share with you, it kind of came from just having a surplus. So our lavender bush is really, really bountiful. I'm not sure why, just really is. And I've got so many bundles around the house of lavender that I wondered what I could do with them. And Sally Pointer is a amazing sort of experimental archaeologist, crafter. If you don't know her, I do highly recommend her. She did a wonderful video on making lavender baskets, and I made a couple of baskets last summer. They're a little bit, wonky. I definitely learnt quite a bit. This one was made using wool that Alex had naturally dyed using, I think it's tea. So this one's his, it lives next to the bed and has done for quite some time. And this one was made using some hand spun. I really love this little one, and it just sits on my crafting table with trinkets and tools in. I've been following lovely Alexandra of the Ancestral Craft podcast for quite some time, and I kept seeing her little pine needle basket coming up, which I highly recommend having a look at on her Instagram if you get the chance. And I've been walking past this tree in our local park for quite some time. I think it was not last year, the year before. In November we had some storms, but a huge branch of pine needle fell down, and it's just been sat there. Like, a lot of the park's quite well looked after and they moved things, and this just sat there, and it finally kind of clicked. I was like, oh yeah, maybe I could use some of that. Maybe I can keep a little bit of that with me. And I went and gathered Audrey's. She's on one. Oh, they smell so good. I went and gathered a selection of pine needles like this. I tried to put them all in the bag in the same way, since I knew I was going to be having to like process them slightly. And I was going to be slightly choosy about using certain coloured ones, but in the end I was like, actually it's just going to be more fun to just gather and then have it a little bit mishmash. But if you are interested in doing a more orange one, you can collect more orange pine needles. If you want to do a more green, collect the green ones. All I did once I gathered them was let them sit for a couple of days, just to let any creepy crawlies, little critters do their thing, move on. And when you're ready to use them, you soak them for a little bit. I think I soaked mine for about half an hour in just boiled water. So if I was making myself a cup of tea, I'd put a little bit into a Tupperware pot. I found this very handy. It kind of kept the heat in and steamed them slightly. And then I would take them out onto this tea towel, taking with a little bit of excess water to dampen the towel, roll them up in it, and then I would give the excess water to the tea plant outside because it really likes acidic soil. So there's a little bit of free nutrients for the tea plant. The final step is just to split them apart. It won't be as easy. Oh, it is not so bad, even though it's quite brittle. Just take off the little ends. Should have figured out what this was called, but separate them and have them ready. It's like Piccadilly Circus around here today. The cat, the door. The two simple tools necessary are a needle, depending on what you're using. I like a little metal needle. I'd quite like to try a hand-forged needle, but this is perfect. And we actually have a couple of straws in the house. I don't really know where they came from, but they live in the drawer, clearly. And something for a gauge. I think there must be something better, but I have it. It's on hand. It may as well get used, and it will get used until it really just disintegrates, I think. To start with, I like to wrap really a lot around the starter point, and give it something to really like hold on to and a certain like bit of strength. And then, yeah, I experimented a bit. I would say wrapping once and more frequently is much stronger than wrapping lots of times like I was doing to begin with. And I'll show you. So here's the first one, and it's a tiny little basket. I just wanted to get a feel for how this works again, and see how it behaved differently to the lavender. I think even from the get-go you can see how much smoother it is. All I was doing is using the gauge, because I didn't use a gauge with the lavender, and topping it up as it was getting empty. So you could really keep it nice and even, and the use of the straw really kept everything in and together, making it really nice to work with and much less rustic than this. And I did prefer the linen just because it felt too precious to use cordage for like a learning project. So I then made this one, and again, we learnt quite a lot on this. I did choose to do lots of wraps, thinking it would be stronger, but that's not the case. I will show you how I finished these shortly, and you'll see that this one has so much more flexibility than the last one that I made, which is my favourite. It's one of my favourite things I've ever made. So one wrapping is much better, but this is very pretty and decorative should you wish to utilise it. I don't know, I'm talking like you're gonna just do one of these, but if you do, I'd love to see. We kind of got a better feel for it. We realised that this was really loose, and we figured out a way of making it sturdier. So this one I actually use by the bed on my side for my earplugs and my ring at night. And I'm going to take it when we go in the van with us too. I don't know, I just love adding these little rituals into the day that kind of make you appreciate and acknowledge things just a little bit more. This one, I'm not sure yet. It was living on the craft table, on my desk that I use for everything all the time. But I was going to make this much bigger, and Alex was like, no, it's done. I was like, okay, it's done. And I think he was right. Because the final thing, I just love. I really love. I'm really pleased with it. And I probably should have documented more of this, but I was just having a really nice time. But here it is. That's a little bag, and it actually works really nicely as a bag. It's got a toggle. Oh, it's got a pound in it. That's happy. So yeah, having figured out very quickly that the smaller or tighter the coil, the more circular your item will be, and the longer it begins, the more oval and longer your piece will be. So I chose to do much longer starting pieces to get this shape, and I started with the base. I then worked my way up, and you might be able to tell that to begin with I was wrapping in one direction, and you'll have to experiment. And what that was doing was pulling it inwards. It was making the shape change. But when I started to wrap the opposite direction, which actually felt nicer when I was working it, I was using my left hand with the needle in. I actually ended up getting a nice straight edge, so I've now figured that out, and it kind of looks intentional, so this is fine. I just used some wool instead of linen. Again, weirdly it felt sturdier, and I think that's because it has a little bit of elasticity. So I worked this in the same way. I kept making coils until I got to the height that I was happy with. I made a lid. I then used some tiny scraps of leather that I had to make kind of hinges on the back. I made a little leather toggle for the front. This needs a little bit more fat or oil on it and evening out colour wise, but that'll happen over time. No urgency. And I wove a little strap using some handspun that I have. And it's really practical. Once I had finished it, I did use it. I used it for a few days to get a feel for it, and decided that there must be a way of making it a bit more waterproof and stronger, and I looked to what I might have on hand, and I remembered that I have some beeswax that I was using for candles a little while ago. So I gave the inside of the lid a trial, and I found that it worked really nicely. This is a bit heavy. I was a bit extra, but actually this is handy because what I'm going to do is reheat this in the oven and wipe that off and put it onto the leather. But it actually really worked well, and what I didn't anticipate, other than it being very waterproof now, is it's made it so strong. Like, it really is strong. I can fit the exact perfect amount of items for a day out without weighing myself down. Doesn't fit a water bottle, but that's an excuse to maybe make a water bottle holder at some point in the future. It fits my phone, my keys, my purse, and a knitting project, and some little headphones. This is the perfect size. I am thrilled with it. I don't know how to say, but it's like carrying a little bit of history with me. It's like carrying a little bit of my local park with me. It just feels very, very special. And it smells amazing. It really smells so good. Anyway. Finally, the last project that I'm working on, because it's an easy one for my little brain, aside from a bit of spinning, is some socks. If you've been here for a little while, you might have seen last year I made some socks using 100% wool and some hand-spun silk that I was lucky enough to process. One of the most beautiful processes, time-consuming, delicate, but I like that sort of thing. I made these long socks with the intention of having a pair of long socks that will keep me nice and toasty in the winter, but also to experiment with how silk would hold up in this form. And really well, it's added quite a lot of strength. I didn't spin the silk with too much twist, which meant that it hasn't been so strong that it's cut through the wool. It's actually much hardier. I wore these loads last year and they seem to be holding up great. And I'm using the same yarn again, so this is Woolly Knits 100% British wool. A heads up, if you do use the black, it is much coarser and a little bit rougher than the more natural colours. I think because this is such a pure black, it's got a lot of dye and it's gone through quite a rigorous process to get this colour. And I'm holding it with an alpaca silk that I can't remember where it came from, and it is producing a really lovely fabric. These ones are ribbed with a cable, and these are not ribbed with a cable. And I'm getting quite far along. I haven't done very much knitting. I did a little bit of this on the way to Unravel, which is a yarn show I went to recently. Really a lot of fun. I got to work there and meet lots of people again and see some friends. So this is basically a adjusted version of my go-to self-drafted sock recipe. If you want to join in on the long sock along, aka just on my stories with an update and personally between messages, yeah, join in. I have put the recipe that I've used on my Ko-fi with a little bit of information. I'm just really enjoying them. I just can't, I'm very excited to not have to wear tights. These ones are a little bit short to not wear tights with if it's really cold out, so I'll put a pair of tights on and these over the top. But I'm going to try and do these well above the knee if I've got the oomph, and I think I will. But yeah, I'm feeling very inspired and more like I want to share, but I'm having less and less time to share. So I'm going to keep trying to record processes and sharing little updates with you. Hopefully some more in-depth ones will come up very soon. I have a long list of things. I'm very inspired right now, but it's always nicer to have a long list of things to not have the time to do than, you know, to feel a little bit uninspired and stuck. So feeling very grateful. Thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you again very, very soon. And don't forget to love each other. I love you.